Hello again, everybody. So, welcome to our live with the Parent Behaviour Coach today. Lou, the lovely Lou, is going to be giving us some tips about how to deal with behaviour during the lockdown period. First of all, I just want to ask how everybody is. If you can leave us a comment just to say, how are you finding it? How are you? What your thoughts are so far. I think it's really important that at this time we talk and share how we're feeling as well, because it is a really difficult time. Thank you everybody for joining us. I'm just going to invite Lou in now, and let's see if this works. I've moved to the bedroom. It's the only room I could get away, so he might pop in, but we'll see.
Hey!
Hi, are you okay?
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, good. I'm just saying, I'm in the bedroom. Look, I thought I'll put like a little addition behind me just to show that it's little learners. But yeah, I've put the washer on in the utility room, and I didn't want just ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum all the time. So I've retreated into the bedroom. So yeah, so I'll just do a quick introduction of me and you, and then we'll get going if you want.
Yeah, let's get cracking.
Because it's just gone 2 o'clock, so people should be joining on, and by the time we ramble about ourselves, everyone will be here. So if you don't know who I am, because granted I don't usually put myself on video,
But well done for
broadcast. I'm Rachel Fay, and I'm the owner, CEO, director, franchisor for Little Learners in the UK and also Little Messy Learners in Australia. So if you follow us, you obviously know what we do. We're an educational messy play company where we teach children how to write, early writing skills. We're wanting to get all children mark making from a very early age, so that when they reach school, they're not as overwhelmed when it comes to writing, because we know how important that is. So focusing on fine motor skills, gross motor skills and things like that. And then we've got our lovely, look how well I'm pointing at them there. We've got our mark makers that Little Learners is based upon. So that's me, basically, in a nutshell. And one of the reasons, well, there's a few reasons why I asked Lou on today, but if you have been following Little Learners over the past couple of weeks, you'll have noticed that we had to postpone our classes. You know, everything's came to a halt at the minute in the country, and all of the franchisees were devastated that we had to stop the classes, which is why we came up with an alternative of activity ideas every day from our Facebook page. So I have really forced the franchisees, not forced, they volunteered, but with a push.
Under duress.
Yes, yeah, to step out of the comfort zones and go live and do an activity every day. And you know, all 34 of them are up for the job, so I thought I'm gonna have to do the same and practice what I preach on, really. So I think the only other time I came on live was with you, so I'm doing it again. And the second reason is that Lou is a really good friend of mine, and she's one of the, well, she is the main person that I come to when I want to moan about being a parent, basically, and when I just want a little bit of reassurance about, am I doing the right thing, or certain behaviours. She's just my first port of call, because she's just so knowledgeable. So I invited her on today because I thought this isn't a really, really good time for us to talk about this, because obviously you're going to experience a lot of different behaviours while the whole family have to stay under one roof for so much time, which is natural, but we want to discuss and talk through some tips and things like that with you. So I thought it'd be perfect to invite Lou on. So I'll stop talking and I'll pass you over to Lou. And I love how we could do this. Like, you're at home, I'm at home, we're staying home.
It's always better in person though, but you know, less technology.
It is. So yeah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as Rich says, I'm Lou. I run a program called the Parent Behaviour Coach, and ultimately, so my background for the past 20 years has been a behaviour and safeguarding consultant. So I tend to work with children, families and professionals when a child has displayed significant behaviours, and there might be family breakdown or there might be a range of interventions. And what I really wanted to do is take that knowledge and insight and kind of put it early on to the preventative side of things to kind of help parents understand their own behaviour and the child's behaviour. Because let's face it, parenting can be quite difficult at the best of times, and we can feel quite isolated, lonely and judged. As a parent myself, I know that feeling of that complex of, am I doing the right thing? Am I messing my child up? And what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a bit of pressure off parents, and I wanted us to kind of come together as parents and create a bit of a parenting movement and a bit of a parenting community on a day-to-day aspect, really. And what I do is I kind of feed in knowledge and insights. I wrote a program to help parents understand behaviour, just so they feel a bit more confident and in control of whatever's happening with the children, because children will display like a spectrum of behaviours. And even though we're parents, we're still all learning ourselves how we parent. Day to day, I learn something new. And I use other parents as sounding boards as well. So what we wanted to do with this is, we're in exceptional circumstances. Nobody's parented through a pandemic like this. And now we're confined to the house with it. So if there were some challenges before, there will probably be something that's a bit heightened and more increased because we are stuck in the house. So we can't feel like we're escaping. So what I wanted to do was just have a conversation with Rach today, and for it to feel really natural and relaxed, and for people to put any questions that they wanted to put in as well. Dip in and dip out. Follow Little Learners UK, but also if you want to follow the Parent Behaviour Coach, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and you can join our group. And it's just a safe space for you to go. There is no judgment there whatsoever. But a lot of people will be feeling a range of emotions right now, from fear to anxiety to acceptance as well. There will be some positive emotions. But what I wanted us to do is to kind of keep talking to each other, because the first part of call when we're going through this is that we look after ourselves so we can look after our children at this difficult time as well. So we were just going to have a chat, weren't we, Rich, really, and see what people picked up, found useful, take away any tips and ask any questions.
Yeah, definitely, because I think usually when you just have, you know, we don't want it to be too structured, we just want it to be laid back, talk about sort of our experiences, and hopefully it'll help some of you at home that are maybe going through the same thing at the minute. But as Lou says, please do, if you do have a question, drop it in the comment box below, or if you know, don't feel confident putting it in a comment, then if you can, here's my little one here, if you can inbox me or inbox Lou, I'm sure we'll get back to you privately if that's not something that you want to put on on live. But do know that probably your question is, hello. This is Oliver. Right. Oliver, 2 minutes, okay?
Why is there milk makers up there? I want to steal all them all.
You can't go and take them in, go and play with them.
No, I want to play with them. See
this is where Rich or I feared we were going to have a BBC News moment where one of our kids was going to come in during it, and it's a live demonstration. So I'm sure every parent watching this right now can absolutely feel how we're feeling. And it's that sense of anxiety and cringe that we just kind of go, we're going to get over that. And just accept that this, it's, I can see Georgina Dixon's laughing. Yeah, that's true. That's great. So,
no, but yeah, what I was saying is that I think sometimes, like what you said before, you think you're the only one.
Yeah.
And I think if you do have the guts to put a question on there, somebody else is probably sitting there thinking, I wanted to ask exactly the same. I'm feeling the exact same. So don't be afraid in that respect. Why don't you take them into the living room or take them outside with your football, okay? Because that'll be good. I've just blown up a big football goal from pretty much really passed out with the amount of push that I put into that. and he's in here. So, where should we start? Where do you think's best to start?
I think the first thing is that I always start with parents is when I start is usually with themselves rather than the children, because it's got to be a case of parent check-in. So how are you managing your emotions? Is it a sense of you feeling anxious, like you should know how to respond to this?
Yeah.
Is it you feeling anxious because of what's happening outside of the house right now? Is it you just frustrated because you don't know how to cope? Or is it a case of you just overwhelmed with it because right now we're trying to work, we're trying to run a home, we're trying to do stuff, and it's about recognizing those feelings. And the first point that I would start, so I don't know if anybody's listening this morning, I spoke on BBC Newcastle, and the first thing I said is stop comparing yourself to other parents. If you see anything on social media about the perfect parenting schedule during this, forget it. Do what's best for you and do what you're comfortable with, because right now we don't need any additional stress. And what you find might be more stressful to you, other people, it will just wash over them as well. So the first step I would say is, how are you feeling, Rach, right now? I mean, that's a question. Exhausted.
I think obviously it's different for every family, isn't it? And I think you've got the sort of emotional stress of just what is happening at the minute. You've got sort of the real life aspects, like working from home and still having to continue what you're doing, but the kids being off school, and it's a whole new sort of jigsaw puzzle that you're trying to work out the best way. And I mean, we're only in week 1, so I mean, a lot can change after this, but I'm sort of, I had it in my head. I had a lot more structure in my head to the days for Oliver. I don't know whether that's just the teacher in us though. I think that's just, you know, where I've taken that from. But I'm very much so now just going with the flow, because I think I need to listen to him and his needs, how he's feeling. And that's actually one of the things that I wanted to say, and he's just gone out, so I'll say it now, is that I feel like he's been quite clingy and teary. And I've sort of tried to sit down with him and say, are you okay? How are you feeling? Is there anything that you like need explaining? Is there anything that you don't understand? And I just think it's a little bit of information overload for him at the minute, and I totally understand, because it's like that for us. So I mean, this has never happened in our lifetime when we were at school. Imagine stopping school in March, like, and then potentially not going back till the September. It's I think that's the thing that I'm struggling with the most. Not necessarily sort of bad behaviour, but unsettled behaviour. Definitely.
So with the unsettled behaviour, that's completely natural, because children pick up on vibes and they pick up on the changes in our behaviour. And we might think we're just trying to behave as normal as possible, but they'll still sense something. They're very intelligent creatures that will, I mean that lovingly when I say creatures, but they're very intuitive to what's going on, and they can't help but pick up things. They pick up things we don't even comprehend or even think's on their radar. So there will be a sense of this isn't normal for them. Children really gain security and a sense of safety in regular routine, knowing what's expected with them. Routine's really important, knowing I'm going to be here, I'm going to be at this. And so when there's such a massive shift of suddenly they're pulled out of their daily routine and they're at home, that will trigger their kind of safety need inside them. So they'll be looking for reassurance from you more than anything. And this is why I say to parents, forget the pressure of having to do the routine, and just go back to a very basic level of, what can I do right now to help my child feel more secure? And is it constant reassurance? Is it more cuddles? Is it a little bit more patience? This is a transition period until they settle down in terms of this new norm, because we don't know how it is. And it's just kind of a case of thinking, how do we settle them the best we can? Because once we settle them, they can kind of plateau themselves out and kind of come into a different behaviour. So you remember, Rich did a course with me last year, and I talk about children primarily have 5 needs, and it's loving and belonging, so feeling like they're part of something, that they're loved, that they're cared for, their self-worth, so their little voice is important and that they're listened to, fun, freedom and survival. And if you think the circumstances we're in right now, all those 5 needs are massively jeopardized, and they'll be picking up that something's quite scary going on outside, but they won't know how to respond to it. So in terms of anxiety, that's natural. What we need to do is create a safe space within our house, and it might be you start putting a bit of routine in, so you make sure that you're very careful about what social media you're on when your child's about, what's on the telly, what conversations you're having with other adults and other children. And what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to put on the Parent Behaviour Coach Facebook page and Instagram a link to some resources that have just come out from the British Psychological Association. And what they've done is they've broke it down into age appropriate guidance about how we should be speaking to children and what we should be saying to them as well, just to minimise the impact upon mental well-being. So in terms of triggers and anxiety, it's often a child not understanding what's happening, not feeling safe and secure, and not having an outlet for those feelings as well. So this is where I'd encourage parents as well to have you got a mechanism where a child can express to you, and it might be through creative play, it might be through them writing something, it might be through them acting puppets out, anything that kind of gets it out and accepts it.
And it's also distracting them, I suppose, from it a little bit as well. Like, it's difficult because, you know, we were put on a bit of TV before. He was watching Cartoon Network or something, and that coronavirus advert came on, where it's sort of saying stay in the house, and it's sort of, it's on maybe it's every 5 minutes in the adverts, and he's being exposed, so it's like a constant reminder. And I know why it's there. I know it's there for us to hammer it home, but I sometimes think, although he might not be listening, it's sort of always going in, or
it's ingrained.
So that worries us a bit, but I do know that he does need to be aware of the situation as well. But like you say, it needs to be pitched at his level, but it's just nobody's dealt with this before, have they? So it's sort of,
we're all finding our feet, and I think what we need to do is just get back to, we know our children better than anybody. With their parents, we have that connection with them, and just on day-to-day modelling, we should be providing a safe environment where each child in our house feels like they've got that sense of security from us, that we will listen to them and that we will support them as well. And that really helps nurture and help their develop their resilience skills. It's about trying to not overcomplicate it, and it's trying to remember the children, not adults. So we can give them as much information as safe to do so, but it needs to be simple, very clear, very consistent, and not fear-loaded. So it needs to be, and put it on an angle of in a positive context of what we're doing to help ourselves keep safe, and the people that we love to keep safe as well. But keep reminding them that also this isn't going on for forever. It's a short time, but it might feel like it's a long time, and it is a bit scary for us, and it will be a bit scary for them as well. But we will get through this, and it won't last forever.
For us, but also trying to portray to them that, you know, it's not going to last forever, and then we're getting told, you know, don't really know how long it's going to last. So yeah, it's so you're saying it's still good to have a little bit of routine in the day then, because
I would
in terms of like working from home, and he's like in his room doing his bits and bobs. Obviously, I can be a bit more flexible. However, I still got stuff to do, so it's sort of saying, right, from, I don't know, 10 till 12 I'll be doing this or whatever, and just having them know the sort of timetable ahead.
So I mean, set a routine. I would encourage you can to do so, but what I would say is don't stress yourself if it goes out. If your child is conforming and kind of goes along the way and is respecting the routine and wants to work that's absolutely fine. But if it's a case of your child needs that, suddenly they're feeling panicked, or they're feeling anxiety about something, or there's just and it comes out in a different way, and the routine goes out, this is where parents can get stuck into a cycle where they suddenly feel really pressured of, oh no, if I don't have the routine, it's going to go out. It's about you using your judgment to be flexible. So when is it a case of you can adapt your routine, but try and have a repetitive routine? So for example, we have got up at 9 o'clock each day this week and done Joe Wicks, because I do believe physical activity and burning it off is really, really important. But then after that, some days he's been a bit fatigued and a bit overwhelmed, so we just haven't pushed it a little bit, because what we don't want to do right now in these trying times is to break the relationship down and to create tension within the home. But we do need to be consistent with it. So there's routine, but then there's also boundaries. And this is why it's really important. And I always talk to parents about setting boundaries. And they're not rules, but they're just about what's a clear expectation of how you're going to behave and how they're going to behave. And the biggest boundary I really insist upon for myself is that sense of I need space. At times, I can feel a little bit overwhelmed and I can feel a little bit claustrophobic. So for me, I have this set space, and it might be my car, or it might be my room that I'm working in, that when I'm in there, I do need that respecting. And it might be that your child has needs to be alone at certain times or that. So think about what's your self-care plan and put that into your boundaries. And just in terms of, you know, remind them of what you would expect in terms of the behaviour. So if they've been disruptive in a sense that they've been violent to other people in the house, or they're damaging something, that behaviour still needs challenging regardless of the circumstances, because we're trying to educate. But what I'm wary about is we do need to teach children consequences for the behaviour, but we need to be very mindful of not getting into that punishment trap. This is why I'm so against the super nannies, time out and naughty steps, because actually right now that promotes distance and fear and control, and that will be a bigger barrier later on. It just manifests because
it's meant to be a safe space as well. That doesn't make sense, does it?
It's about the safe space, but it's also about right now children need connection and security more than anything, and that's what we've got to look at as well. So if you're frustrated, it's okay for you to take a time out and kind of go and have some space and come back. So I know on the course which I talked about, when a child's misbehaving, we tend to have I would advise three options we have. We can either challenge it in the moment, we can choose to ignore it, pick our battles and say, right, in the grand scheme of things I'm going to focus on, that's not one right now. Or we can choose to divert their attention. And that is about when a child's doing something, they're driven from an image in their mind. It lasts about 90 seconds. We need to try and create whatever that stimulus is that's driving that mood to focus them elsewhere. So some people call it distraction, and that's absolutely fine. But actually, from a neurological point of view, we're looking at diverting the stimulus away so they're not kind of getting into that. Right, you've taken the toy off me, so I'm thinking about the toy, I'm going to have a paddy. You're thinking about, right, we're going to not focus on the toy, we're going to talk about something else, about in a moment, shall we go out and do some water fights or something like that. So remember, if your child is misbehaving, you've got three options. Do you challenge it? And how are you going to challenge it? You could ignore it, or you could divert the attention elsewhere as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. And is that, so, I mean, we only have one child, don't we? But what sort of happens for these parents that have, you know, 3, 4, 5 children in the house, and they're sort of dealing with all different types of behaviour at once? What's the best thing for them?
One of the things is go back to your core values, core boundaries of what, as a parent, regardless of which child it is in your house, do you absolutely want to have as an expectation of their behaviour? And make sure you communicate in a way that's age appropriate to them, that they clearly know what the consequences would be if they behaved in a way that was following that or not following that as well. So they start to take responsibility for their behaviour and have a choice. Now, it's interesting in the dynamic, because what I see is one of our mutual colleagues and friends had 2 children in the car. And I was sat in the front, and she was asking my advice of what do I do now, because they're beating each other and they're kind of blaming, and one's put their finger up my nose and one's put that. Is you need to speak to them consistently the same, and you have to make sure you're like a UN peacekeeper, that you're not choosing sides. So try to make sure that if you're challenging multiple child's behaviour, is first things first, is if there's a violent fight on, or they're frustrated and they're having a temper tantrum, now is not the time to sit down and reason with them because they're in an emotional state. So your primary objective should be calming them down so they're in a rational state that you can talk to them. So that might be that you ask them to separate in the sides of the room. Make sure that they're over. So if you've got two children, they're fighting, and you want to deal with that, calm them down. Ask them to maybe set at separate parts, and don't get in and back one up and then challenge the other, because that's not the time. Because what they're baying for is your attention, and they're baying for you to agree with them, so they've got one-upmanship and power over the other person. That's where it can become more complex and create bigger problems. What they need to see is that the parent will behave neutrally and unbiased to both children. And what you do is, once you've calmed them down, I wouldn't get into a cycle of reflection at that point. What I would do is reiterate the ground rules. So it might be that one child snatched a toy for another toy, and instead of going and making it about an individual child over another child, because this is a power struggle right now, reiterate what boundary you have in your family of going, in our house, we don't snatch toys. So it's not that, oh, but it's her fault over her fault. You are just consistently modelling this and challenging it. If we snatch toys, what might happen? This is where you would involve the child. So you'd say, well, we might get hurt, or we might get the toys taken off us. Okay, so is that what you want? So you're outlining with them what the consequence might be if they're doing something like snatch toys off one another. At that point, and they've understood what the consequences might be, this is where you need consistency. So you do need, when it's appropriate to challenge that behaviour, you need to educate them why that behaviour has been challenged, but you need to give them chance to kind of rectify and move on, and then consistently challenge it afterwards. Because otherwise, what they're going to say is, oh, Mum said today we can't snatch toys, but tomorrow Mum's tired, she's on her mobile phone and on social media, she's let me get away with it. So they get mixed messages then, because you're not consistently challenging, and then this cycle builds up and builds up. So actually it takes more power and volume away from your voice. So this is what we don't want. We want you to, when you're parenting and giving feedback, to not feel frustrated like you're banging your head against the wall, because as parents we've all felt it, haven't we? We're just like, oh my God, here I go again. I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again, and it just doesn't help. So
yeah, definitely. No, I think that's great. I think we've got a question back here, so I'm going to scroll back.
I did see one pop up. That's why I looked a bit distracted, because I can't multitask, guys. I can't talk
read it out, but before I forget what's in my head, let's go back to toddlers after this question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So Martina says, I'm a lone parent and my 2 and 3 year old are only seeing me. I've not got a garden. How do I manage their fighting?
Okay. Just as I was saying before, is first of all, take a deep breath. The 2 and 3 year old is very, very hard when you've got them so close together and they're still learning their behaviour. Remember, children aren't finished products in their behaviour. We've continually got to educate them as well. So just to reiterate what I just said, when they are at that, try, if possible, to, in the room, separate them to calm them down. And if you try to educate them when they're in a state and they're angry and they're at each other, they won't listen and they won't respond. And what will happen is all 3 of you will get frustrated as well. So right now, it's a very tiring time, because they're in the house, they haven't got a garden. So the first thing is, I would utilise, where possible, your one-day exercise. When you get out, where can you get them that's safe to do so, to make it as interactive as possible and burn as much energy off, so they aren't as pent up in the house. Even if you might not feel like getting out, please try and get out, because just that boost of getting out and the emotional lift that you'll get from getting out and exercise do that as well. Again, try and get back with, and when you're setting boundaries with children at 2 and 3, it's quite difficult because you've got the communication barrier. So it might be that you're using images to say, we don't do this and we don't do that. Can you, I don't know your personal circumstances, so I'm just generalising and I'm sorry about this, but can you create a space that when they have that they go off to separate parts of the room or maybe the house where they do their own tasks? Again, excuse me, as I was just saying to Rach, don't try when they're in that situation of fighting at each other to say one's right over the other. because you're just going to backpedal. The main thing is that they're getting clear and consistent messages, they calm down, and then after the event, try and speak to them one-on-one if you can do that as well. But the big thing is in that situation, I know it feels quite lonely, is make sure that on a night you are, wherever you can, seek whatever support you can, because parenting is training. And especially when you've got one, well, even one child, but two, especially at such a young age when you're on your own, take it easy. Please reach out to your peer network. Keep in contact with us. I've got a group on the Parent Behaviour Coach Facebook page, which you're more than welcome to. So you're more than welcome. I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of insight. It's hard without speaking directly to you to kind of break it down, but please try and set some boundaries and consistently follow them, and be easy on yourself as well. So I can see some more questions coming through as well. I'm trying not to get distracted by them. Sorry.
Shall I read out the next one?
Yeah.
So Rachel said, how do you deal with an age gap and the older one always getting told off? That's a difficult one to try and generalise. There are age gaps, so it's about looking at age-appropriate responsibility and what you would expect and what you would like to see in your home. So again, it's about boundaries and modelling those behaviours as well. The issue with the older one kind of getting told off is what I would bring back to what need do you think that child has with the older one that is creating behaviour that fails, that needs to be told off? And if they're repeating the same behaviours after they've had feedback, what is it do you think that they're still trying to achieve by doing that? Because children's behaviour comes from a point of it's trying to achieve an unmet need. So is it their love and belonging need? So they're not feeling connected, they're not feeling their voice is important. Is it the self-worth, again, around their identity? Who am I within this? What power do I have? Is it their fun need? It could be just something that they're not agreeing with what's happening in terms of routine. It just isn't fulfilling that. Is it the freedom? All of our freedom needs are under challenge right now because we have to stay in the house unless we're going out for our exercise. Or is it survival, that it's a fear-loaded situation as well? So try and have a bit of one-on-one time if you can. Wherever possible. I know that's not always easy. In terms of the older one, I'm presuming if there's an age gap, the older one will be having a later bedtime than the younger one. So is it you can kind of, you do need to use your assessment skills of right now, where do I need to put my priority? Is it just a case of getting the young one to do what they need to do and then getting them to bed and then investing more time in the older one as well? So I guess it's looking at what are those behaviours that keep getting needing to be told off as well. But in terms of parenting, how can you promote that, ultimately, that love and belonging need within the older child as well? So where is the voice of the child within this? You know, what are they saying to you about why they're behaving the way that they're doing? What are they trying to achieve with their behaviour as well? Again, I hope that makes sense. It's really hard not speaking face to face to people, and that's why I'd say just either private message me on the Parent Behaviour Coach, or if you can send me a little bit more detail privately, and go from that way. I'll send you a message if I can, or I'll try and do a more in-depth video as well, because sometimes messaging can be a bit of a nightmare because I do get overwhelmed with messages as well. So. Yeah, that's fab. Yeah, I can understand that if you've got quite a big age gap in your kids at home as well, that might just be quite difficult within itself, but because you might have, you know, a child that should be in nursery and a child that is missing these sats. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Two like pretty massive situations there to deal with, on top of on everything else. And how do you split your time and work from home and do both at the same time? I suppose it is just prioritising what you think needs to be done at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's a question of what your perception is and what their perception is. Do you feel that you're giving them enough time and attention? And I think I wear caution with that, because I think as parents we always feel guilty that constantly not feeling like I'm giving my child enough attention. So we'll always beat ourselves with that maternal guilt stick. But it is kind of checking in with the child. Do they feel like they're not getting enough of your attention and that they're not getting enough of support as well? So, and that's hard, but keep the relationship going. especially, and allow as much opportunity one-on-one time that you feasibly can to let the child keep telling you what's going on, because just remember, all behaviour is trying to achieve something, and the behaviour is the child's best attempt to achieve an unmet need, but it's also behaviour they use that they feel will get them what they want. So as adults, we have actually a limited amount of behaviours available because we're learning all the time, and as we get older, we develop more, but then we plateau where we just don't learn anymore. Children need us to guide them, to teach them different ways to get them healthily what they want and what they need to kind of live a fulfilling life as well.
Yeah.
So
if only we knew exactly what they were thinking.
Yeah, it probably jungled, and this is really interesting, isn't it? I think if somebody could invent something that could translate it, but half the time they don't know themselves. They can't articulate it. They just have a feeling, don't they, where it's just like, feel a bit rubbish, and I don't want to do that, but I can't articulate it. God, could you?
Do you know what I mean?
God,
we know. We know.
When you wake up in the morning, you're like, I just can't be bothered. We feel that as well, but then we're like, no, kind of got to do some work and get paid, and or days when you just don't want to see people as well. So
exactly, yeah. Right, so we've got another Rachel here. What's a Rachel? Oh,
is it a Rachel party?
The Rachel party. I did have a better punchline, but then Ollie just nearly jumped on my head there. So.
I'm called Rachel.
Give me 1 second, thank you. So Rachel says, the timeout step doesn't work for my 4.5-year-old daughter. I've tried counting 1, 2, 3. If I get to 3 and my daughter doesn't listen or doesn't tidy away, I put her bare on the shelf, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's a little bit of advice needed there.
Yeah. If anybody's followed my work before, I absolutely hate the naughty step, timeout, anything like that, because if your child's misbehaving right there, they need connection and need to understand what the situation is. They're after something as well, and you get caught into a punishment cycle. So I do a course on this, so I'm trying to condense it a little bit. But ultimately, what we try and do is we try and get into this power battle where we try and control our children and make them behave in a particular way. When they don't conform to that behaviour, we then get into a punishment strategy. And it's I'm going to put you in a particular situation, and it becomes a power battle between the two. And what children will do is they'll always try and up the ante. So they'll always try and go, right, they'll conform for a little bit, but what do you do after that? That isn't helpful. So this is where you need to kind of look at how you review in the situation. And some of the things are, first of all, is, do I need to challenge it now? Whatever they're doing, do I need to challenge it now, or can I challenge it later? If I need to challenge it now, what do I want to achieve from this? And first of all, I've got to make an assessment. Are they mentally in the right place to hear me right now? Am I mentally in the right place to respond to this? If the answer is yes, make sure any feedback you give them is very clear and consistent, but present choices. When children are presented with choices, they need to take control and need to take responsibility for their own behaviour. So for whatever the situation that has led them to be in a naughty step, it might be, for example, they've not brushed their teeth on time. The amount of parents I speak to, and they literally, it's like therapy where they'll just rant for about 10 minutes going, I just can't get them to brush their teeth, for God's sake. Is what you need to do is, first of all, choosing your time when you do that and outlining the consequences. So, Olivia, for example, you've not brushed your teeth, you need to brush your teeth. Okay, they don't brush their teeth. Okay, well, that's your choice whether you want to brush your teeth or not. But if you don't brush your teeth will get smelly. Your teeth will get full of things that might damage your teeth. Your teeth might start to hurt really painfully. We might need to take to the dentist. I might need to reduce sweets because you're getting too much sugar because you're not cleaning your teeth. Or you could clean your teeth. What's your choice? And actually, you present the options and it might be, I'm not brushing my teeth. And you know, sometimes you've just got to take that step back and think, right now, I'm not going to challenge that. Because what happens is, if you can consistently keep challenging and say, you need to brush, children tune out, their brains actually tune out to us as parents because they're generalising to sleep. So you kind of need to mix up your strategies of how you're going to challenge your child's behaviour. So it's like throwing them a curveball where they go, oh, I didn't know mum could do that or say that. So ultimately you're trying to help your child take responsibility for their own behaviour. So if the child doesn't brush their teeth, they've then got to deal with the pain. I know that's hard for us as parents to kind of let that go a little bit, but it just kind of, where can you promote opportunities for the child to have a choice and take responsibility for their behaviour as well? Please, 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 especially in this climate, stay away from the naughty step, stay away from timeouts, because children need connection more than ever, and all that does is it just creates distance.
Sorry, Lou. What about what Rachel's saying about putting a bit, like taking something away from the child for bad behaviour?
This is where I break into it. So if you take something away, it gets into a power battle. So this is a control strategy. It's like, oh, you're naughty, Rach, I'm going to take your phone off you and take it away. What happens is that damages a relationship and it actually creates distance. So I would ask Rachel, what is the purpose of taking that toy away? Is it because try and avoid getting into control strategies of excluding things. So present consequences of, if you've been naughty, we're tired right now, so we might need to go to bed a little bit earlier, or you might need to do this, and give them more options rather than try and take a toy off in the way. Because ultimately what you're trying to do is educate your child to have different strategies to dealing with the situations rather than you constantly do, because the toy will stop working. Anybody that falls into the trap, I can guarantee it, of taking things away to remove it, that's where they'll start to have problems later on, because the child will just stop conforming. So ultimately try and think, what need is that child fulfilling with their behaviour? How can I help them meet that need in a healthier way that suits them and suits me, and help them evaluate by choosing a choice in terms of how you move that forward as well. So please be wary of like taking stuff away.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for doing the whole counting down things on, and I can't remember, was it on your course where we talked briefly about that, and how it made me think of it differently about it, because yes, Ollie, it usually works and he reacts to it, but it really I realised, I don't actually do it anymore, that it really put the fear in him.
Fear.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't know if that's the right thing to do in order to get him to do what I'm asking of him. So that's after we talked about that, I thought, actually, because you're getting down and down and down to the numbers, and you can sort of see their body react to it, like a bit of stress, isn't it? It's a bit of stress, and but so many parents, I mean, it's a well-known sort of behaviour strategy that you hear people do in the shops and out and about and everything like that. So it is difficult, but I found that, and I know this is really, really easy and a lot of parents know about this, but I found something that works really well with Oliver when I remember to do it, because it's easy, but it's about remembering to do it in the situation, isn't it? Is positive reinforcement, like
massively so.
Yeah, like whatever situation that I'm in, making sure I pick something out of what's happening and praise him for that, and he responds so well to positive reinforcement that he wants to do more, to get more praise. So it's like a knock-on effect, isn't it?
It's massively so, and this is where we need to flip it. So everybody watching, just want you to do a quick test with you. 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 10, 3 times 5 is 16, 4 times 5 is 20, 5 times 5 is 25. What do you notice? Usually, I was waiting to see if anybody's writing, people will say, actually, 3 times 5 is 15, not 16. And that's the quickest answer, because our brains, if you notice, our brains tune in to the negative quicker. You said 16, didn't you? Yes, Claire, I did, deliberately to say that, because our brains, well done for paying attention, Claire. Our brains deliberately pick up on what is negative rather than what's positive. So I gave you 5 sums there, deliberately did 1 that was wrong. Well done, Claire. I deliberately did 1 that was wrong, and straight away we went, oh, that sticks out. So what we need to do is we tend to focus on the negative more than the positive. And what we as parents and what we do as children, we want to encourage them to focus on the positives, because in terms of like a neuroscience point of view, if you imagine a cornfield, when we run through a cornfield, we leave a path. And if we keep running through the same path, that path becomes stronger, doesn't it, and more visible to see. If we do that, our brain's like that, and it's constantly negative, 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 that's what sets up our brain function, basically, in a more negative light than a positive. So what we want to do is keep reinforcing with our child the positive. So when you were saying there, Rich, about positive reinforcement, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to praise what they're doing right, rather than keep doing focus to what the negative is. And that's where a lot of our systems in terms of school, etc., are punish, 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 control. You're doing this wrong, rather than, oh, keep doing that right. Actually, you didn't brush your teeth as quickly or as long as what I did, but well done, you did brush your teeth. Or you know, and trying that positive reinforcement really makes a big difference as well. I hope that demonstrated my point. And well done, Claire.
I think it did, definitely. I've got a couple more questions.
One thing, I did see Rachel's comment where she said she was going to try that today. Rachel, if you could message us and let us know how it gets on, that'd be great. I'd love to know if it works out, or if you just want to check and get a bit of feedback afterwards, Phil.
Oh, sorry, I don't know where I went there.
You just keep going off. Stop fiddling with stuff.
So I think Rachel also said, any ideas how to make bedtime more fun and keep it structured too? Well, just
Consider it rang me.
Who did they not know that you're live?
I've switched notifications off as well. How dare they? Sorry about that.
Yeah, so that was just a question about bedtime, keeping it structured, a bit more fun. I've been pretty much trying to keep the same routine in terms of bedtime, letting them maybe stay up a little bit later, but I'm conscious that I don't want to fall into a routine where, especially at his age, that we're getting up later, and then it's going to be much harder to get back into that school routine once it gets to September or whenever they're going back to school. So I'm quite conscious of it. I'm trying to keep it the same, you know, the whole bath, story, bed. We always have a story. He looks forward to his story. And he knows what's expected of him at bedtime, and also what's about to come. But I don't know what you think. Should they stay up a bit later, or like would all go to pot, or what?
Nah, I'd make exceptional circumstances, but I try exactly the same as you there, Rachel. I keep mine's 11. And I try and keep mine in the routine the same. And he's like, oh, well, I'm not in school, can I have Wednesday off? And I'm like, no, really. There's some days you're going to be tired and we'll reduce the work. But ultimately, try and keep as much as you possibly can. Yeah, I mean, I can see Rachel's just put up her stories. It can be a case of trying to just settle them the best way that they can. And my son always used to love story time, but I think what he loved more is he loved that it was one-on-one time, it was cuddly, it was relaxing, to try and chill. And the best way that you can is try and promote that routine. So as close as you possibly can, make the exception, but try and keep a routine around bedtime and getting up is what I try and do. So
yeah, and I think she's just commented there. I don't know how old your little one is, Rachel, but I'm a sucker for staying and cuddling Ollie after a story as well, and I know I probably shouldn't, because he's 5 now, but we both enjoy it, and he feels very safe when I'm there. But actually, funnily enough, I started to think, is there ever going to be a time? Have I just, like, what is it, made a rod for me back or something? Yeah. Is there going to be a time where he can actually fall asleep on his own after a story, and I just go, right, that's the story done, good night, and walk out of the room? And actually over the past month, he started to say to me, Mum, you can go now. So he's sort of making that step himself, which I'm really, really happy about, because it wasn't a massive worry, because I know it is a massive worry for some people, the whole co-sleeping and debate and things like that. And I breastfed Ollie until he was 2.5, so we were doing bed sharing for a long time. But I think you've got to do what works best for you at the time in terms of that. And I think once it becomes a problem for you or a problem for the child, then that's something that you need to look into. But it's a bit of a grey area, isn't it? I think bedtime and sleeping and things
I
like
think do what's best. Anything, honestly, throw all the advice out the window. You know your child better than anybody, and I think anything that builds that connection stronger, that helps you feel safe and the child feels safe, then keep doing it as well. Don't worry about getting it wrong and making the rod for the back, because they'll naturally, as you were saying, they'll grow up and get to a point where they can withdraw themselves and self-soothe and regulate. The big thing is about that connection and strengthening the relationship between you, because when you've got that connection, you've got the strength of the relationship, that helps you massively influence their behaviour when they're misbehaving as well. So I saw Rachel's comment, just reading, my daughter likes me to lie down reading a book until she falls asleep, and it can take longer than half an hour. So what I did, my son was like that as well. And it's great, Rachel, because it obviously means that your child's massively getting their love and belonging needs been met in that situation. Yeah, and this is the thing. It's about helping them feel secure, especially right now, helping them know that they're loved, helping them know what's expected of them as well. So it can be that you can start to set a boundary and an expectation, so they start to become consistent as like lots of kisses and cuddles, but you're going to start gradually withdrawing, or there's going to be a set time, and help them have choice in that, Rachel, if you possibly can, of saying, how best would you like to read this? At some point, mummy needs to leave the room, so how can you negotiate and keep trying what works, and wherever possible, don't enforce it, Rachel, where it's like, right, mummy's leaving bang on 6 o'clock. Try and help the child feel like they've got some involvement and choice, and like say, mummy needs to leave the room at some point because mummy might need to go to the bathroom, or mummy might need a little mummy time. So how can you help mummy get mummy time? Try and help them be problem solvers, because it builds up resilience and it builds up problem solving skills, and they want to help as well. So it can be, Rachel, if you say to them, mummy's feeling tired, how can you help mummy? Can mummy go to bed sooner than later? Can mummy leave now? You were saying, I saw in your comments, Rachel, about bringing bedtime earlier. I wouldn't. I'd just keep it at the same time, but I'd keep working with your child to kind of help them solve the problem where possible, to help them get over it. And sometimes it is hard, and I really am anti let them cry it out and panic, because it creates trauma and stress. You feel like the world's worst mother, they get upset, they then hype themselves up into a state where it takes longer to calm them down. What we need to be doing is helping children self-soothe and regulate as well wherever possible, so helping them have the strategies, and the best way they do that is through consistency and knowing what they're getting and what's expected of them as well. So
yeah, definitely good advice. I'm just looking at the time, Lou. We've nearly
I know
have you
my
got
bum's
time
going numb.
Have you got time for a couple more questions? And then
I have, if there's any coming up. One of the things we talked about is, if there's enough demand and there's enough interest, we could possibly start doing this every Friday, because let's face it, we're not going anywhere, and not for the foreseeable. So we're happy to kind of jump on between the two of us. And after this, if any of you on Facebook, please come and find the Parent Behaviour Coach, and on that Facebook page there's a group. Please feel free to join it. I do try and keep an eye on it, and if you're confident to do so, just post any questions, and I'll dip on as much as I possibly can to answer that as well. But Rich and I might look at maybe doing this again next Friday if it's been useful as well. But yeah, if there's any other questions before we finish, or just if you want to say hello, I'll go on.
Yeah, just say hello. If you're watching, please just drop a message and just tell us what you think of the live, because it's not often we do lives, and we're just sat at home. We're in the same position as you. We don't really know what's going on with life at the minute, so just show us some love if you can. That would be lovely. So we've got here, my 3-year-old has started pulling angry faces when we ask him to do something he doesn't want to do. He will then step back as though scared if we go to him. What's the best way to deal with this, please?
Okay, so first of all, don't challenge the negative faces, because they're learning. He or she, did you say he? I think is it a boy or girl?
I'm just showing it now to people, I think.
Oh, him. So what I would suggest is, what I wouldn't do is pay attention to the angry faces, or if you do, play or give praise is what I'm trying to basically say. So actually I've gone, well done, that's great that you can pull some angry faces. What other angry faces can you pull? Do you want to see mine as well? But if you do an angry face, maybe we should do a happy face as well. So try and promote a bit of balance as well. So angry is one emotion, and I don't know if they've watched Inside Out. That's the Pixar movie. That's quite good at expressing other emotions. So maybe watch that movie and ask them if they could create a joy face. I can't do it. My face is trying to be expressive as possible.
Face?
The joy, you know, Joy is the main character, the female character, and there's angry and then there's sadness. So can you get your child to model and expand that as well? If you're noticing that he steps back and fearful, then what I would do is just stay back and try not to move, and just keep reinforcing positive, open language and smiling and reinforce it. Try not to challenge that behaviour in any way. It's great that they're expressing it. Give praise to the fact that they're expressing it, but try and encourage them to be problem solvers and detectives and create other faces as well. So yeah, and also in terms of Pixar Inside Out, some of the children I work with, what I do is I print off images, and there's some great stuff online where you can just print it out and you can kind of get any images and laminate them and get them to act it out as well. So anything that helps children understand that all emotions are valid. We can't decide that because it's meeting a need, but it's just about them expanding their emotional intelligence as well. So
yeah, definitely. Good. Right. So, I think so. I've asked. She says, yeah, we've watched it yesterday and he loved it. And just going to try this approach from a day and print images. Thank you so much.
There's also another Pixar movie, sorry Rach, to cut you up, called Inner Workings. If anybody has that, it's free to download. It's about 11-12 minutes. I use it with a lot of children as well. It helps them understand how the brain sends messages to the rest of the body and how the brain impacts our feelings. So actually, some of the positive things that we do, it's about getting our brain to see the positive in things, like an attitude of gratitude. And right now, a bit of a challenge for you all that'll help is, can you sit down at the end of the night with your child and ask them to find at least one thing that they're grateful from the day? So it might be, Ollie might look at you, Rach, and say, I'm grateful that I've got a great mum, or I'm grateful that I get cuddles, or I'm grateful thing. It's just right now we need to keep this positivity going, and we need to get children to look for the positive. Remember, you know, in times like this, we need to look for the helpers and we need to look for the sunshine, not the rain clouds.
Yeah, definitely. Fabulous. I think we've just had a question through there, more centered around sort of sleeping through the night and things like that, which is a really, really difficult time. And if it's any consolation, I'm not the behaviour expert here, I'll just say, but I used to breastfeed Ollie till he was 2.5, and when he was younger, especially, you know, 1 and under, 1.5, he was cluster feeding throughout the night, constant, and it is so exhausting. It is really exhausting, and I did think that he would sleep through. Eventually, you know, I was getting told, and it's a bit like what you were saying before, Lou, about peer pressure and stuff as well, because we get an awful lot of that, I think, especially in terms of sleeping through the night, kids sleeping through, honestly. And I think you've sort of got to drop all those expectations, because I was getting told, our family, friends, you know, we should be sleeping through the night by now, we should be doing this, or you should stop breastfeeding them now, or whatever, or you shouldn't be sleeping with them, you know. And at the end of the day, I had to just switch myself off from all of that.
Good.
And he only, I don't know if this is going to help, he's only really just started totally sort of sleeping through the night recently, and not having to, you know, come into our bed or whatever. But do you know what, I think for me, it might have been more judgment or peer pressure or what other people thought than actually what I was comfortable with doing. Do you get what I mean?
Totally.
So it wasn't actually a problem, but I felt judged by others. So that's a really difficult one, because I think all children are different, but I understand how hard it is, and I would just keep up. I think they're so young at that age, aren't they, Lou?
Yeah, definitely at 1. It's just not set. There's still the primary need they need is love and connection, honestly, and it will sort itself out. I know at 1. Yeah, that's it. And it's you know, they have limited communication strategies at that age. All they know is that they need to feel loved and safe. And yeah, they might be picking up something. There is changes within that, but there's nothing wrong with that. We were in a difficult time.
No.
It's about just us being easy on ourselves, and it's about just, you know, if a child needs a cuddle,